Robert Farquharson, the Father's Day Dam. On Father's Day 2005, Robert Farquharson's car left the road and plunged into a deep farm dam in Victoria, Australia. Farquharson swam to safety. His three sons, Jai, Tyler, and Bailey, did not. He initially claimed a coughing fit caused him to lose consciousness, but investigators soon suspected a more sinister motive: revenge against his ex-wife, Cindy Gambino. A key witness revealed that Farquharson had previously mused about getting back at Cindy by taking away what she loved most. After 2 trials and an overturned conviction, he was ultimately sentenced to life in prison in 2010. As of 2024, he continues to seek appeals, but the evidence of his intent, choosing to save himself while his children drowned, remains a permanent stain on his defense. Lori Vallow Daybell, the Doomsday Mother. Lori Vallow Daybell didn't just kill, she depersonalized her victims. Alongside her 5th husband, Chad Daybell, she adopted a fringe religious ideology that claimed people could be possessed by dark spirits or become zombies. Once she labeled her children, Tylee and JJ, as such, their deaths became a spiritual necessity in her twisted reality. The pair fled to Hawaii to marry while the children were missing, smiling in wedding photos as the world searched for the kids. In June 2020, the remains of Tylee and JJ were found buried in pet cemeteries on Chad Daybell's Idaho property. Lori was convicted of murder and conspiracy in 2023 and received multiple life sentences. In 2024, Chad was sentenced to death. The case remains a landmark in the study of how extreme cult-like beliefs can lead to the ultimate domestic betrayal. Timothy Jones Jr., the PT Nightmare. The case of Timothy Jones Jr. is a haunting example of how custody status can sometimes act as a blindfold for authorities. In August 2014, Jones killed all 5 of his children, ages 1 to 8, in their South Carolina home. He claimed the first death was an accident during a physical training punishment, but his subsequent actions revealed a calculated darkness. Instead of seeking help, Jones murdered the remaining 4 children to cover his tracks. He then spent over a week driving through several states with their bodies in his car, using bleach and trash bags to mask the stench. Because he was the legal custodial parent, no Amber Alert was issued. He was only caught after a routine traffic stop in Mississippi revealed the smell of decomposition. Jones was sentenced to death in 2019, a sentence affirmed by the South Carolina Supreme Court in 2023. It's terrifying to think how easily a predator can hide in plain sight. If you're finding this content valuable, please share this video with someone who studies true crime. It helps us keep the channel running. Yasser Abdel Said, a manhunt for honor. Yasser Abdel Said believed his daughters, Amina and Sarah, were his property. When they began to adopt American customs, dating and seeking independence, he viewed it as a stain on his family's honor. On New Year's Day 2008, he lured them into his taxi under the guise of a peace offering. Instead, he drove them to a remote area in Irving, Texas, and shot them both. Sarah managed to place a final, desperate 911 call, screaming that her father had shot her before the line went silent. Yasser then vanished, sparking a 12-year manhunt that landed him on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. It was later revealed that he never left Texas. He was hidden by his son and brother in a suburban home. He was finally captured in 2020 and convicted of capital murder in 2022. The case highlighted the chilling reality of how honor can be used as a euphemism for ultimate domestic control. Susan Smith, the Lake of Betrayal. In 1994, Susan Smith stood before national cameras, sobbing as she described a black carjacker who had sped off with her 2 young sons, Michael and Alex. For 9 days, the United States was gripped by a search for the stranger. However, the facade crumbled when police discovered Susan had been dumped by a wealthy local man who didn't want the baggage of children. The truth was far more harrowing than the lie. Susan had driven her car to the edge of John D. Long Lake, strapped her children into their seats, and let the vehicle roll into the water. While she was pleading for their return on TV, she knew exactly where they were. In November 2024, after 30 years in prison, Smith appeared before a parole board for the first time. Despite her pleas of remorse, her request for freedom was unanimously denied. She taught a nation to look past the tears of a grieving parent and search for the evidence hidden beneath. The betrayal of a mother's bond is a theme that haunts these cases. We're halfway through our list. Stay with us as we look at how honor and spirituality are sometimes used to justify the unthinkable. Diane Downs, the bushy-haired phantom. On May 19, 1983, Diane Downs drove her 3 blood-soaked children into an Oregon emergency room, claiming a bushy-haired stranger had flagged her down on a rural road and opened fire. It was a story designed to elicit immediate sympathy, but her performance in the hospital immediately raised red flags. While her children were dying or paralyzed, Diane appeared eerily calm, focusing more on her own minor arm wound and her obsession with a former lover, Robert Knickerbocker. Investigators eventually realized the truth. Diane viewed her children as obstacles to the life she wanted with a man who didn't want a family. Her daughter Christy, who survived the shooting despite a stroke, eventually regained the ability to speak and provided the ultimate testimony: "My mom did it." Diane was convicted in 1984. Even after escaping from prison in 1987 and being recaptured, she has spent decades maintaining her innocence. Most recently, in December 2025, she was denied parole yet again, with the board citing her continued lack of accountability. John Battaglia, revenge via telephone. John Battaglia did not kill to escape a burden. He killed to ensure his ex-wife, Mary Jean Pearl, would suffer an eternal, unclosable wound. A man with a documented history of domestic rage, Battaglia's violence peaked on May 2, 2001. During a scheduled visit with his daughters, 9-year-old Faith and 6-year-old Liberty, he placed a phone call to Mary Jean. He forced his daughters to speak to their mother, asking her why she wanted their daddy to go to jail. While Mary Jean was still on the line, she heard the gunshots that ended her children's lives. Battaglia then taunted her with a profane Merry Christmas, a callback to a previous assault that had landed him on probation. It was a crime of pure, weaponized spite. Despite legal delays and claims of mental instability, Texas executed Battaglia by lethal injection in 2018. His legacy remains one of the most heartless examples of retaliatory filicide in American history. These stories are a grim reminder of how thin the line can be between protection and peril. If you're finding this research helpful for your own understanding of criminal psychology, drop a comment below and let us know which case you find the most inexplicable. Stephen Plattel, The Collapse of Boundaries. The case of Stephen Plattel is a descent into a nightmare of obsession and the total erosion of parental boundaries. It began with a search for identity when Katie Rose Fusco, who had been given up for adoption as an infant, tracked down her biological father, Stephen, in 2016. What started as a reunion quickly mutated into a predatory sexual relationship. Despite the horror of those around them, the two moved in together and married in Maryland after falsifying legal documents. In 2017, they had a son, Bennett, a child whose existence was a biological and legal anomaly. When the justice system finally intervened, arresting the pair for incest and removing the child, Stephen's fragile sense of control snapped. When Katie attempted to end the relationship in 2018, Stephen chose total annihilation. he murdered their 7-month-old son in North Carolina, then drove to Connecticut to ambush and kill Katie and her adoptive father, Anthony. Stephen ended his own life shortly after, leaving behind a trail of blood that spanned 3 states. Before we dive into the next chilling case, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. We uncover the darkest corners of true crime every week, and you won't want to miss our upcoming deep dive into unsolved cold cases. Lacey Spears, the digital predator. Lacey Spears represents a modern, terrifying breed of predator, one who uses the spotlight of social media to mask the slow poisoning of her own child. Beginning in 2008, Lacey documented the life of her son Garnett, portraying him to the world as a tragically ill boy fighting mysterious ailments. Through blogs and social media, she garnered a massive following of sympathizers who hailed her as a saintly, tireless mother. In reality, Garnett's illness was a calculated manufacture. Prosecutors argued Lacey used Garnett's feeding tube to introduce lethal amounts of salt into his system. In January 2014, Garnett was hospitalized in New York with extreme sodium levels that defied medical logic. Hospital surveillance reportedly captured Lacey taking the boy into a private bathroom with his feeding equipment, followed by a rapid decline in his health. Garnett died at just 5 years old. Lacey was convicted of second-degree murder in 2015, with the judge noting her depraved indifference to her son's life. Even after her conviction, the lies persisted, including a fabricated story about Garnett's father being a hero cop who died in a crash.